Hello Saber fans. Today I'm going to take a look at um, my opinions on blade lengths. So, there's a lot of different companies out there that make blades at different lengths. You can even get your own custom length at the custom saber shop, which is actually one of the things that I do quite often. And I just want to share some of my feelings on why I think that certain lengths are going to be better for certain things, and not necessarily by height. I know that that comes up in a lot of conversations. If you're taller, then maybe you should get a longer blade, and to some extent that's true, but I don't think it, my personal opinion is, I don't think it's that much of a determination. So I'm 5'10", so just to establish that. But I do have a son who's more than 6 feet. And we duel a lot together, and I've heard a lot of advice that 36-inch blade is best for taller people, which I kind of disagree, especially if it is a heavy grade blade. Now this is just a 32-inch blade. It's a 10-inch hilt, so this isn't Ultra Sabers, and I feel like this looks like a full-length blade. So even at my height, you can see, as low as I can comfortably hold this, this still clears my head. And if I was to kind of go to guard, I don't have to go too far down to really protect. So honestly, I think a 32-inch blade is a better length. And a couple of advantages of having the shorter blade is that, especially if it's a thick wall blade, which this is just a thin, but if it's a thick wall blade, it's actually going to be heavier, and that's going to make it harder to do certain spins. And you'll be a little slower, and in my opinion, it makes the mirrored tip a little farther out. So on a 36-inch blade, you're looking at the tip about here. And I do have one. So even though my opinion is that the 32-inch blade is better, my son does prefer the 36. So if I were to switch this blade, you can see the difference there. But one of the things that I've noticed is that you lose a little bit more light with the longer blade, because the mirror is farther apart, or it's farther from the source, and therefore, yeah, you can see this dimming of light is greater here. Flares at the bottom, and then does that. Now I probably do need to change the battery in this, because it has been sitting on the wall for a while, but I just wanted to show you that. Another thing is the weight. So with a thick-walled blade, not only is the blade longer, but it's going to be heavier, and that weight is going to be more at the tip. So that makes spinning and balance much harder. So I also have, here's a thick wall blade, and this is only a 28. Now I don't recommend a 28 for a single. However, just to kind of show you, one of the nice things is it's not too bad. It does look, it looks short if you're looking to see if it looks short. But what I like about the 28 versus a 32, so a 32 thin-walled is going to be about the same weight and balance as a 28 thick-walled. So if you just want to get the same feel for spinning, and you want it to be shorter, maybe you're indoors. I'm indoors right now. I don't want to hit things, knock things over. Getting a thick-walled 28 will have the same feel as a thin-walled 32. So that's another reason why you could do that, just to spin. I, however, do have a really good purpose for 28s. So a lot of recommendation I also see online when it comes to lightsaber length is if you're going to use a staff. So obviously, your staff, you're doubling the length of your lightsaber. So most sabers I know, if they're selling it intentionally for a staff, they're going to go with shorter blades. So I know that Ultra Sabers, for example, they default their blade length to 32 for their staffs or double hilts. Again, though, since I consider 32 a full size, I take that one step further and I go with a 28. So both of these blades are 28. The bottom blade is on the ground, and this exceeds my height. I feel like that is adequate. You know, if both of these were 32s, this blade would be like this. And that, to me, that's too long. That's kind of excessive. You have a lot more to kind of move around. I don't want to drag the ground when I'm swinging. But not only does it look good as a staff with the shorter blades, but if you've got a coupler to dual wield, these are much easier to kind of maneuver as the shorter blades. So that's another reason I think 28s are preferable. Even for someone my height, I feel like these are really good. You know, I feel like I can kind of cover all the zones, and aesthetically it looks good too. Like I said, the shorter the blade, the brighter it's going to be, because that mirror tip is actually closer to the source of the light. So as you can see on these, they're 28, and there is no loss of light towards the tip. Now, I think these are probably fresher batteries too than the other saber, but as you can see, the brightness down here seems to be about the same brightness all the way up. Now, this is also a trans white blade. I think that has something to do with it as well. So the more diffusion you get, the more even the light. But I mean, really, you know, that looks great. Now, another trick that I'm kind of experimenting with is the blade width. And actually, I'm going to pause and let me go put some fresh batteries in this. All right, so got some new batteries. So now we're, you know, getting rid of that dead sauce. So again, this is the 32 thin wall. But one of the things that I'm experimenting with is the blade width. So most of the sabers that I get, actually all of the sabers that I have, are 1-inch diameter hilts. But the Custom Saber Shop also sells 7/8 inch. And one of the things that I like about the difference, so you really, if I was holding these two side by side, kind of moving them around, you probably couldn't tell the difference in the width. But if we kind of move closer and compare, you can see how this one is a little thinner. So one of the things that I'm experimenting with is kind of using that width, kind of using the thinner width so that a shorter blade looks longer. And all I've done here to get it to fit is I took about a 2-inch section of 1-inch blade and glued it to the 7/8. So I just kind of sanded the inside of this, the outside of that, put some super glue in there and just shoved it in there, and it's not coming out. So again, I think this actually is a 36-inch, just because I really love photon blades, and because of how reactive it is to blue, it's incredibly bright. But what you'll notice is, so the blade comes out and it's a little bit smaller than the emitter. So that's a cool effect. But also, as you can see, it is very long. And because it's thinner and because it's a photon blade, the illumination is all the way to the end. But this really does look like a movie accurate width of blade. Now, I've ordered a couple more because I actually want to do a pair of 28s and experiment with making my staff have a pair of 28 photon blades, and with them being a little thinner, I feel like it will give the illusion that they're longer just by the visual proportions. And I do have a couple of 30-inch, so I'm kind of experimenting. Up to now, I've been talking about increments of 4. I like that. It's pleasing because you go from 36 to 32 to 28, and then of course there's some 24-inch blades for like initiates and stuff. Like this actually is an initiate. It came with a 24-inch blade, but I don't remember what I've done with it. 24 is definitely too short, even for a staff. Now these I've cut to 30, and what I've also done is because this is a thick wall blade, so I may actually end up dueling with this, I put an O-ring right above there so that as I go to get to the emitter, I just do a little push there and it kind of shoves that O-ring in as some extra support. So when I lock this in, That's not going anywhere. And even though this is only 30 inches, because it is the 7/8 inch diameter, it does kind of look more like this 30. You know, if I was to hold these two, you know, kind of do some forced perspective, try to get them to be the same width, you know, they do kind of look very similar in length, even though when I put them side by side, the 36 is quite a bit longer. But that's just my thoughts on blade widths, blade lengths for different purposes, and I hope you guys enjoy.